Da-da-da-da-da-da. Oh, good.
Wonderful.
Yay. We did it. We did it.
Yes, it's such an accomplishment, isn't it? I attempted to sign in on Safari, and I forgot it has to be Google Chrome, so I had to log out, log in, and it's all very exciting. So yes, all done now. Fantastic.
All right.
It's my
Nice to meet you face to
you
face.
too. You too. Like real people.
Like real people. Yeah. Yeah. So it turns out I can record this right on Zoom.
Oh, great.
So Zoom is recording
Lovely.
our audio, I guess.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I don't have to set up a separate microphone, which is good.
Brilliant. I'm just turning off my phone, make sure no disturbances and all that.
Okay.
Brilliant. Great.
Okay. Is this your microphone up here?
It is, sadly, yes, sorry.
Oh my gosh, that's
Very
great.
disturbing. It's not actually that big, it's just very close in.
It has the foam surround on it.
Yes, yeah, a shield to it. Rather than a pop shield, it sort of seems to suit my voice better, so I enjoy it more with the foam on, yeah.
Terrific, terrific. Okay. So tell me what voiceover is, if that's the correct term that you like to use for it.
So voiceover basically comes from the idea of that ethereal voice that you hear often when you see film. So you'll watch an advert, for example, and the voice will tell you what the product is or what thing is happening. Or in a movie trailer, you might see clips of the film and the voice that speaks over the top of that, hence the term voiceover. The thing I actually do is audiobook narration. So we're known as narrators rather than voiceovers, but voiceover is where I started. So I'm very happy to be called any of those things. So yes, it is the right term for a specific number of things within the industry, but actually we're all VOs. So yeah, it's all good.
Okay. And you are bilingual.
I am, yes.
Yes, and did a wonderful job of doing a County Clare Irish accent for Madrone. That was just really awesome.
So I'm the youngest of four, and my mother was pregnant with me when the whole family moved from Spain to England. So I was born and brought up in London, but we spoke Spanish at home. So I was brought up speaking Spanish as a family, but went to school and learnt English, from the television and from friends. So I was bilingual, which allowed for a very interesting appreciation for sound and melody. And I had grandparents who would come over to England but spoke no English. So I would act as interpreter. I was always very sort of curious about, what was going on and being allowed to be in the family conversations, because, in I had a very Mediterranean father, and children were to be seen and not heard. So my job as interpreter allowed me to be sat at the table with the grown-ups. And so I became quite good at doing simultaneous translations, curious about that effect where a joke is told in Spanish if we had English friends round, and everybody would laugh. And then I would tell the joke in English and then they would laugh. So there was always this kind of delay, which I really enjoyed with the two languages, as sort of that kind of curiosity of how people hear things and the words they use and the styles they have, and it wasn't something I was ever conscious of. It was just something that fascinated me and interested me. And I'm a great believer that we all are underwhelmed by our own abilities, and so being bilingual was of no consequence. You know, I knew not everybody could do what I did, but the fact that I could do it was no big deal because I had always been able to do it. So it just was. And so yeah, I was always, as I say, fascinated by languages, and having fallen into this work, I seem to have a penchant for other languages, other accents, the intonations and music that other people use when they speak languages. And curiously, I always say that I do a generic accent from most places. So I have a generic Irish and a generic Scottish and a generic Eastern European and a generic South African, a generic American. But when you asked for County Clare, I was caught on the hop and had to refer. We obviously work with a lot of accent coaches, a lot of different people who teach us to do what we do. And I made a quick call to my friend Nicola Redmond, who's my go-to accent coach, and went, County Clare specifically, and she ran through kind of the mouth shape, the sounds, the vowel sounds, the things to look out for, which coincidentally were my generic South Ireland accent. So yeah, it worked out very well for both of us in the end.
It certainly did. I had a few people that I asked before you who County Clare. Oh no, I couldn't do that.
It sounds really specific. That's the trouble, when you actually pick a town. But as you commented and we saw, there are so many resources now, totally free, on the internet, on YouTube, people podcasting, people talking about their hometowns, people, if you investigate enough, there's information out there to be had. And yes, which is in the end what worked for us. So it was great.
It surely did work out. When you speak of being born Spanish and raised English, or British, I should say, there's some big cultural differences between the Irish and the continent and Spain and Britain, right?
Very much so, very much so. I also was brought up in a Catholic family, so I went to a convent school full of Irish people, and we lived in a entirely Jewish neighborhood in North London. So I think that all sort of came to bear with regards to my interest in so many different facets of life, the way people live, how they develop language, and why they use the words they use. So very curious. And I am a totally different person in Spanish than I am in English, which I hadn't really noticed until I started studying this whole genre of life, as it were, and voiceover sort of brought that to the fore for me. I hadn't really realized how different I am when I speak in Spanish than when I speak in English, which suddenly allowed me to be just about anybody. So yeah, I think it's that fascination with accents. I'm aware that although there is a technicality to accents, so people speak with a particular area of their mouth or with a particular placement of their tongue or in a particular position within their heads, but a lot of despite how they speak, the accent they use, people are about personality. They're about the energy they bring to the table. They're about the shape of their body, the way they hold themselves, what they think of themselves, how other people think of them and how they're treated. All of those things come to bear on the directness with which they speak, or the volume, or there are so many other facets to a voice, which is why I enjoyed the County Clare lady, because it was really clear cut. As a bookshop owner, she was, a little bit sassy but excited because it was her event that day. It was all very, everything comes to bear when the voice comes out. Suddenly the character is often very clear. with regards to how they speak and the words they use. So it's really interesting.
So true. Well, how long have you been doing this kind of audiobook narration work?
So I'm an economist by trade.
Yes.
At about 18, 19, I had been doing lots of singing in church and with my brother. He plays guitar, and I told my mother that I wanted to be a singer, that I didn't want to be rich and famous. I just wanted to use my voice. And she said, "Oh, you have to be really good to do that." So I studied economics, and I went to university, and I became a financial administrator. I worked in offices for 20 years, and then realized that actually life's a bit short. And I went back to singing initially and trained classically, and then got very involved in musical theatre, spent 4 or 5 years doing provincial theatre, got leads in shows and stuff, absolutely loved it. But you know, I've got 2 daughters, kids growing up. It's difficult to kind of find the time and juggle everything. And so I bought a microphone and I was messing around at home. And this was about 5 years ago, November 2014. Sorry, you want the long story, don't you?
Go for it.
My vacuum cleaner broke down. And I'm surfing the internet looking for a new vacuum cleaner. And I come across this one vacuum cleaner called the G-Tech AirAm. And the advert is such that the lady says, powerful, lightweight, cordless, the G-Tech AirAm. And I went, a cordless vacuum cleaner? How exciting is that? That means you don't have to unplug it and plug it back in. And, you know, I'm in my mid-40s. It's very exciting, the idea of a cordless vacuum cleaner. Anyway, so I'm surfing the internet and I'm looking at different things for my microphone. And should I have speakers? And does one need any kind of acoustic sound proofing something? I knew nothing at the time. And I come across this gentleman called Gary Tertzer, who does a VO masterclass. So one day you go up to London, he chats with you, talks you through the different genres there are. You have a couple of goes at reading different things, and he puts together an early demo for you to be able to go out and see whether or not this is the kind of thing that might suit you. And I'm looking through his website, and it says, if you're interested in talking to me, check out some of the testimonials from over 200 students who've come through my doors and are now working as VOs. And there's literally this list of people and just names, and next to them little commercial clips of things they've done. And I'm thinking, and I press one, and the lady says, powerful, lightweight, the G-Tech AirAm. And my head exploded, and I went, am I supposed to buy the vacuum cleaner, or am I supposed to go and meet this man? I had no idea what to do. Anyway, I phoned Gary, and he is lovely, and encouraged me to sign up. And I went along a couple of weeks later, had a wonderful day. And about 3 weeks later, I actually landed my first VO job, which was the same price as the cordless vacuum cleaner, which I've been bought. So the story has a happy ending.
That
it was
so great.
A roundabout way of getting me into this world. So yeah, it was it was a good story and a good entry to it. He was very good at pinpointing the different genres there are and the different places you might go to find work, to find out whether this is what you want to be doing, where you ought to study, what things you need to look into, and kind of just gave me that initial impetus that I needed to be able to kind of embark on this brand new career at midlife. You know, it was a very big change of scene for me. And I actually spent the first 2 years pretty much studying. I was convinced that I shouldn't be there, that I, you know, didn't belong. I didn't go to drama school. I hadn't really done anything official, as it were. And so I studied sound engineering, so I knew what the terminology was and what the different things that, you know, the hardware and software required. I studied vocal production, so I knew. Initially, I had no ear. I didn't know what sounded good and what didn't. And that's actually something that I feel really only comes over time. People would say, can you, if you listen to this noise floor and then listen to this one? I didn't know what a noise floor was, and I couldn't hear the difference. And I suddenly went, just a minute, I need to, so, you know, there was another course called critical listening, which is about being able to hear different tones and different pitches and so on. So it was a fascinating, those first 2 years were a lovely journey of discovery. I've always been about education and learning. So it was really nice to have something brand new to kind of devote myself to. And I began in corporate narration and e-learning, training videos, those sorts of things, just because that's where my voice sits. It was a very easy transition into that. And then an audiobook came along and I was hooked. I absolutely love it. And so I still do corporate narration in English and Spanish for several companies through Europe. But my love is audiobooks. It's very much it kind of
like
brings together.
your interest in music, though, was a good background for
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. The breathing and everything that goes with that was yes part and parcel of very much so.
And so I'm trying to transition here. The assignments you've had for audiobooks. Are you signed up on ACX? Do people find you through ACX?
I am. They can. I have a website, annaclements.co.uk.
Yes, I've been.
And I'm on ACX as Anna Clements, Anna with one N. And ACX is very good. It's where I started. It's basically a marketplace that's about matchmaking. Authors go along, they put up their books, and anybody who sees it and is interested can apply to send a sample through with their voice, and then the author gets to have a listen to their words in somebody else's voice, which I'm sure is a very strange moment, and pick the person they want to work with. And ultimately it's about communication, it's about personalities, isn't it? There has to be a fit of some kind, and there has to be an interest and a passion from the narrator's point of view to be able to inhabit that world and give it that excitement that the author had when they wrote the book. So it's a lovely place to be with regards to kind of wetting your feet and finding out how the whole system works. More recently, I've been very lucky to work with publishers, people like Findaway, Spoken Realm, who have a group of narrators that they might suggest 3 or 5 narrators to an author, so that the author maybe isn't quite as inundated by anybody and everybody. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm open to anything and everything. So my favorite thing is actually going around to author conferences and chatting to people about audiobooks. A lot of the work I get is actually just through meeting people and being as excited as I am about audiobooks, and finding the right work and the right jobs. It's nice.
Well, you should have a steady stream of work because audiobooks are becoming so popular now.
We're doing very well, aren't we?
Yeah, we really are. What are some of the books that you've done, that you've completed work on?
So I actually just did a Twitter post about, I've did 3 or 4 books in the last sort of 6 months.
Wow.
So books will come and go. Books, I did a book on compassionate counterterrorism, a non-fiction book over Christmas. I'm currently in the midst of a 5-book series of, oh goodness me, steampunk. Which was a whole new genre to me. So that was fascinating. And another series that I've just embarked on of fantasy, which is going to keep me busy for another 6 or 8 months now, which is great. And I do a lot of romance books. But over the last 6 months, 2 or 3 of the books, they stick with you. Usually the characters come, they inhabit me, they get given life, and they leave after a week or so as I move into the next book. But there are 2 or 3 that always hang around. And I was thinking about this just a couple of days ago. There's one called The Distance by a lady called Zoe Folbig. That's a long-distance love affair between a lady who lives in Norway and a gentleman in Mexico, which of course required accents that I had and accents that I didn't have, that I do now. So that's a really lovely book, and I really enjoyed that one. And it's the story and the feelings behind the people kind of hang around with you for a while. A couple of others, there was a story called Another Side of Paradise, written by Sally Koslow. It's about the life of F. Scott Fitzgerald and Sheila Graham. And again, that was a really interesting introduction for me to the American accent, which is what got me. That was 2 years ago. I was fascinated. I'd never been to America. and was completely fascinated by the whole continent, to be honest.
Uh,
And
yeah,
so
we
that
have
was a
so
lovely
many different
introduction to.
accents. There are
Yes,
so many
very,
different
yes, which I had no idea about. Yes, yes.
accents.
And that one I got because I do one of my accents that I enjoy is the Jewish accent, a Hebrew, English with an accent. And Sheila Graham was born in the East End of London, brought up as a Jew, and then moved to America. And so that was a lovely transition of that sort of feel of that book. And it's a great book. And then more recently, one called Sisters of the Winter Wood, about two sisters during the Russian Revolution, Jewish sisters who, and obviously the whole family, but then the Russians within the community that they live. Yes, so books that kind of hang around for a little while is nice sometimes. They really sort of, the characters stay with me. Which is lovely. It's a really lovely, because actually the preparation I find is the hardest part. I say hardest in as much as it's time consuming, and it doesn't feel like I'm actually getting ahead. It's a bit like when you see the foundations laid on a house. Somebody builds a house, and for the first 3 or 4 weeks you're thinking, are they actually doing anything? And then when they raise from the ground up, suddenly it just takes off, doesn't it? And it just goes.
Right.
That's the narration part. But the laying of the foundations and the making sure everything's in the right place, that's the preparation, which is the time during which the characters kind of introduce themselves to me. And I have to read the book from start to finish to find out who the goodies are, who the baddies are, who the love interest is, whether the baddie is going to turn into a goodie, in which case I can't give him too much of a horrible voice, because otherwise, this book I'm doing at the moment, The Alchemists, I'm on the second book now, and there's a policeman who appears in chapter 3 of the first book. This entire second book is about him. And I had no way of knowing that. Often minor characters will become a big story suddenly as the story progresses. So it's the prep is important. It really is. It's important to kind of delve deep into, and meeting the author is lovely. Speaking to people and actually finding out their reasons for writing the book or their background, and suddenly you go, oh, that's what you meant. It makes everything really different and much more real to me. So that's lovely.
You mentioned The Alchemist. Are you talking about Paulo Coelho's?
No, it's The Alchemists with an S. And it's a gentleman, the author's name is J.M. Bannon, but it's a guy called Joe Solari. He does an awful lot of sort of, how to produce your books and stuff for writers.
Okay.
And interestingly, we did a Kickstarter campaign to be able to get the audiobook made for that series, which was a fascinating journey. Actually, it's not something I'd done with him before, but we did a Kickstarter campaign and an interview to get people interested in getting involved to be able to get the audiobooks produced. So that was a really interesting journey with him. So yeah, that was very cool.
I'd asked the question in our notes about are you making a comfortable living doing this work?
I've been full-time for the last 2 years. Comfortable is an interesting word, isn't it?
Satisfactory.
I'm making a living. My sister always says champagne taste on beer money.
Of course, yes.
There are so many things I want to do. The conferences in America are so exciting, and it's so wonderful to get together with other narrators. And until now, we didn't have anything similar to the APA, the Audiobook Publishers Association, here in the UK. But we've literally just started the Audiobook Creatives Alliance, the ACA, and I'm on the founding committee. And we're hoping to start up our own network, really, of organizing meetups and getting together with people, so that we don't have to travel to the States to get that kind of feedback and that kind of warmth from, because it is this box that you see me in, I live in here 5 days a week, and I love it, but I perhaps don't interact with humans as much as I should. So getting to conferences, meeting up with authors, meeting up with other narrators is really lovely. It's a great thing to do.
In a sense, that's the same life that a writer undergoes.
Very much
spending an awful lot of time by yourself, not interacting with people a lot, living for those conferences when you get to go meet other people, and then back to work, right? But
yes.
you are so valuable to an author. I know for a fact from experience that a narrator who doesn't read the book first is not going to do a good job.
Do you know, there are so many pitfalls, but it's often one of the questions I'm asked, do you read the book first? And when I first began, I thought that, there's a lot of kind of business side to this work. You have to be slightly savvy, and you have to work out how long it takes you to do something, how much that's going to cost, and therefore how much you're going to charge. And I thought, well, so you get it. When I began, like everybody else, I thought, so you get a book, you read it, and then you send it off. How hard can it be? But there are so many stories of people not reading books. I had one that actually was me just prepping poorly at the beginning of my career, where I had a romance, young man who owns a factory, lives with his mother, falls in love with the girl. They meet up, have a fight, obviously, they come back around and fall in love with each other. And literally in the last few pages of the book, it says, and his mother turned to her Irish brogue coming through, and then says this line. And I went, oh. Irish brogue? What? When?
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's going to catch you out.
Well, I think it's one of the things in terms of advice to authors, you need to give a worksheet with a description of the characters, not only physical, but how they speak and other characteristics that may impact the voice that they use, the inflection.
I asked for that now because authors often have it. Often when you've all spent this time writing your book, you have little post-it notes and information everywhere about the people you're living with. Sure. And often I find also the authors have often spent years with these books. These people have been sat with them for a long time before the audiobook is thought about. Mm-hmm. So they know these people really well. So where better to go than the author themselves for that information? So given the opportunity, it's funny, when I work with some of the publishers, I'm not given the opportunity to speak to the author for different reasons, which actually just makes the job a bit harder, but not impossible. Mm-hmm. So more often than not, the information is in the book. It's just a case of paying attention enough to hear it. It's fabulous.
But you're having fun?
I am loving it, actually. I am absolutely loving it.
Excellent.
I don't tell anybody I said this, but I feel like I finally found the thing I would do even if nobody paid me. It's that thing that I never thought existed. People talk about, do the thing you love and you'll never work a day in your life, or whatever that saying is. And I thought that wasn't a thing. I didn't think it actually happened for people. And sometimes I have to pinch myself because particularly early on, I was really surprised that people were willing to pay me for the way I speak. And it didn't make any sense. But again, I think I came around to the concept of us all being underwhelmed by our own abilities. Mm-hmm. I never thought that reading aloud would be a job I could, make money from. Turns out it is, which is fantastic for me. So, yes, all those years.
Doing better than the authors in most respects. We're going to run out of time in less than a minute, Anna. So, I really have enjoyed talking to you so much. And as a last question, do you see yourself still doing this kind of work in 5 years, or do you see a growth path?
Oh, very much so, actually. Yes. Yeah. They say that you are the person you are in 5 years is the books you read and the people you spend time with. And the books I'm reading are getting better and better. And the people I'm spending time with are getting better and better. Excellent. So, and I will be making a comfortable living in 5 years' time.
Audiobooks have just grown so big. I mean, they're so important.
Going really well. I'm writing an article for a Spanish VO magazine about the growth of Spanish audiobooks, which I'm also, of course, being bilingual, I'm fascinated by. And didn't realize how many books there are that are half and half, half written in English, perhaps with a Spanish protagonist who speaks in Spanish. So yes, the growth is incredible. We're very lucky. Yes,
we are. Thank you so much for speaking with me today, and it's really fun to welcome you to the Fictional Cafe, where we have an audience of people who I'm sure are going to enjoy listening to what you said today and take it to heart for their own writing work.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much indeed. It's been lovely to meet you, Jack.
Thank you. Same here, Anna. Bye-bye
Take
for
care.
now.
Bye-bye.